When you're running a business, it's common and maybe easier to think that you should obsess over the customer experience. But what if you spent as much time or maybe even more obsessing over the employee experience? Because the better your employees are, the happier they are, the better your customer experience is going to be. Our guest today has taken that exact perspective. Bob Ruffolo is the CEO and founder of Impact, which is a sales and marketing training company that helps growing organizations end their dependency on outsourced agencies and instead bring that talent in-house. And he's obsessed over his company culture and growth, and they have incredible results. Their onboarding program is like nothing I've ever seen before, and their hiring process is incredible. It can take 1 to 3 months. And they also have amazing internal career development programs. And all this effort has resulted in a culture where employees and customers stay. When you obsess over the customer and the employee experience, everyone wins. Bob Ruffolo, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Kendra, thank you so much. Excited to be here. And wow, that made me sound better than I really am. But I really appreciate it. Happy to dig into all of that today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you because you're one of the rare leaders who, as I've researched for the podcast, has really embraced a lot of the things we teach at my company at Turning the Corner around like self-awareness. And I mean, if you look at that sign behind me, it says, I'm not the leader I need to be a year from now, but I will grow. And as I was researching you, I was like, oh, you and I are cut from the same cloth, even though it's hard, right? It's hard getting that feedback. So I'm wondering if you can start by just sharing your experience back in 2015 when you did your first 360.
Oh man. Yeah, it was one of the hardest days of my life. Very, very necessary. So I think the story probably even starts earlier than that. Like many founders, entrepreneurs, especially people that start their companies in their 20s, they've never been a leader or manager, never ran a company before. So to think that you could just jump into that and be great at all aspects of the business, just not realistic. My background was I was freelancing, doing websites and some marketing projects. And I had built up a decent book of business, and I started hiring people. Hire one person, hire another person, company starts growing. And here I am in 2013, and I have 20 employees. And I'm 27 years old or something like that. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I was not a good manager. I was not a good boss. I think I had some bad values from previous work relationships that came in of what I thought you were supposed to be as a boss. And I had turnover issues. I had, every 6 months I'd be turning over good people. And I had some people that stayed with me the entire time. And those people helped me become a better leader along the way. But I had all the issues that a lot of young entrepreneurs starting businesses have. It really wasn't until people sat down and said, and really people that cared about me and said, Bob, you've got to focus on these things. People do not see their future here at Impact. They're coming in, they're getting their start, putting something on their resume, and they're leaving. And we're not creating the environment for them to stay. So that started a whole list, a whole mission for me to get better as a leader. I started reading books. I read Good to Great. I was reading Book Traction. I was reading all sorts of books on how to be a leader. I started networking more. And a mentor of mine, who's my uncle, said, Bob, you have to have a 360 survey. And I went to a professional firm. It wasn't cheap, but they did various types of assessments and interviews and surveys with my folks, put together a very extensive report. And when I read what was in there, there was some good stuff, but hey, listen, there's a lot more bad stuff. One line that was in there that I'll never, ever forget. It couldn't have been further from the truth, but it made me cry. It was like a dagger to my heart. It said, Bob only cares about his personal brand and money. Mm-hmm. And what they didn't know was I had many employees making way more money than I was making. I wasn't even making $30,000 a year yet. And this is like 3 or 4 years into my business. I was pumping all the money back into the company, doing whatever I could to create the best environment, to take care of the customers, whatever it was. And I had employees that felt that way about me. And, So you cry and you reflect and you think about it, and then you realize this is what some employees think of us. It's just
Right.
the reality of it. And, you got to take action on that. So I addressed the elephant in the room. I called an all hands meeting and said, I want to thank everyone for your feedback. I have to admit, some of it was really nice to hear, and some of it was really, really hard. But I'm committing to getting better at these three things. This is the three biggest trends I've heard out of all this feedback. And I'm going to work on 1, 2, and 3. And I promise you that I will get better at these three things. Again, that everything else just kind of came from there. But that 360, I know, I'm so glad you started with that. That was one of the most important parts of my career.
Yeah, no, it's so hard. And I mean, this is the work we do. And we ran a survey with my team not too long ago. And even though I had braced myself for how I would respond to it, because I've seen so many other leaders and the way they respond, it was still so hard. Like I had a sleepless night, and I had great feedback even, and there were still sleepless nights. Like it's hard, but it's so important that we actually look at that and examine that and then take the action. So, I mean, I love that you took 3 things and said, I'm going to work on these things. We did the same thing. We're now looking at the top 4 challenges that were brought up in our survey and pulling them into our strategic plan. So I always try to look for the opportunity in those times, but it's really challenging for sure.
And feedback is a skill. It is a skill that gets developed over time. You get better at giving feedback, you get better at receiving feedback. But all of us, the first time when we're really getting tough feedback, somebody can give you 100 nice things. You can say, here's 100 things you're doing well, and here's one area I want to see you improve on. And we're all going to hyper focus on that one thing. Like, oh my God, like that's the sleepless nights. Like I have to be better at this, even though we tried to say, here's 100 things you're doing well. We always seem to focus on the one thing that we're not doing so well. So that's just, and over time you get better at it.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. And very few of us grew up in families that taught us that from a young age where it comes natural. So, I mean, it's a constant skill for sure. I love that you said it that way. So what if now, so that was like, 10 years or 8 years ago. So now fast forwarding, like, tell us about where you're at now. What's happened with your business?
Yeah. So the business did just shy of 12 million last year. We have about 70 employees, hyper virtual, even though we have a local office here in Connecticut, which we spent a lot of money on, made a beautiful, beautiful office 9 months before COVID. So after COVID, everyone got comfy. This is my home office. We're all working from home. No one uses that office. 70 people all over the world. And we're doing good. Hey, listen, every business has their challenges, and I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, and we are certainly feeling it, just like many of our clients are, just like many businesses are right now. And I think one of the things that's certainly helping is that we've created the culture that we have that empowers people to take control of their area of the business and have the autonomy and the ability to do their best work. But it's been a lot of work to get to the company to this level. And I spend most of my time focusing on my people, because if I focus on my people and take care of them, they will take care of the customers and clients. And I'm very blessed that even though we are in a client service business, for the last, really 7 years or so, except for a few rare occasions, I don't have to jump in and solve client problems. I don't own accounts. I don't have to do any client work. I put all my time working with my leadership team, with my management team, working with my people, and they have developed the skills and they are fully able to take care of all the clients.
That's amazing. That's great. I think building a strong leadership team also really helps with kind of communicating those other pieces of the culture when you've done a good job building that team too. So you're not the only steward for the culture. You've got now a team that's a steward for it as well.
One thing I've been very lucky about too, Kendra, is they often say that being the CEO or being the entrepreneur is very lonely. And I know everyone, if you run your own company, you've probably heard that too. I never actually felt that way.
I same with you. Yeah.
Yeah, you feel the same. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that's just a credit to having a great leadership team or just a great support system built inside the organization. I joke around with everyone, but all my best friends work for Impact, because either they started Impact or they were a friend before and they came in Impact. We just were in this mission together of doing great work and building a great company. We spent a lot of time together, and we've watched each other grow. We watched each other start families. And all my best friends just happen to work for Impact. So I've never felt lonely.
Yeah, I haven't either. I think part of it too is being a little bit vulnerable and not being afraid to just be human as a leader. I don't know where sometimes these things come from, but there's a lot of leaders out there who feel like they have to hide their emotion and hide struggle. But when you're actually honest about it and you kind of lay your cards on the table, I feel like people are like, oh, well, I can help with that and I'll take over that. And I don't want you worrying about that. I mean, I've had employees on my team who've actually had their own goal being help Kendra sleep at night because, I'd have these sleepless nights and they're like, it's my goal to not have that happen for you. Yeah. That's beautiful.
It's a blessing when you have a team like that.
And especially then when things life changes for you. Like if you have a baby or you have COVID, or I lost my brother to a heroin addiction a few years ago, and my business survived because the team just took over. It was great. I mean, it was terrible, but it was, they took over. So it helped a lot getting through that terrible time. But so
they're, right now too, and I'm not sure if you're noticing this, but so many more people are sick now. It's just whether it be COVID or bugs going around, or maybe because more of my staff has kids and that the kids are bringing stuff home. And I think what you just talked to is, and we've had tragedies along our journey as well. But there's also been a lot of joyous things, since COVID happened, we've had probably 20 babies born at Impact. So we have 2 or 3 people out on parental leave at a time. And that puts a lot of stress on an organization, but we have a culture where we want to have a company that can do that. We want to have a company that can support families and working parents and so we understand that it's part of our culture that we have to step up when somebody's leaving for a little bit, and we got to take care of them because our time's going to come too, where we're going to have to be out for a month or two, and we want our teammates to pick up for us as well, which is also, a lot of employees would resent somebody that's been out for 2 months and now I got to pick up all their work and stuff. But being able to create that culture where people can leave, and even the CEO, even they kick me out every now and then. Like, you got to just go away for 2 weeks. And, I think that's a sign of a healthy company.
Yeah. One of my good friends says, he's a CEO as well. And he says, the sign of a good CEO is how much vacation they take. Yeah. And can you actually step away? So I want to talk with you about, let's talk about your onboarding program. So one of the things that I've realized personally in the last couple of months is how unbelievably expensive onboarding is. And meaning that I had an employee that joined in July of 2021, and we track utilization really tightly in terms of how many hours are being billed out to customers. And I had another employee join because of growth in April. So I could do the side-by-side comparison of their utilization rates at the beginning of employment and at the pretty much full onboarding. Her onboarding was 80% at that point, her utilization, where his was like 2%, 3%, 10%, and it didn't converge until he was here for about 6 months. So, if you think about the cost associated with onboarding, it's really expensive, and it can erode profitability very quickly if you're adding a lot of people on. Tell us about what you've done, because you have a really phenomenal onboarding program, it sounds like.
And it is expensive. And if you have high turnover, now take what you just talked about and multiply that by, your high turnover rate. So it's critically important. And that's why you really have to make sure your staff are staying for 3, 4, 5 years. So you're getting the value out of the giant investment, getting your ROI, return on investment. We are certainly in the knowledge base industry. Our folks are expected to have knowledge and expertise in certain areas. And on top of that, we have a very particular culture that we need to strengthen and protect. So our onboarding program, certainly ranges in different lengths. You mentioned 6 months, and certain positions we've tried hiring somebody for, and we realized it takes 6 months or even longer to get somebody fully utilized or fully effective in their role. In other roles, we get to speed much faster. But one thing I think we start all of our hiring and onboarding with, well, actually, even before, we start with culture. And what we've done is we've built out what we call our 12 core competencies. And I can't take credit for this. My COO, Bree, just did an amazing job on this, where we identified it was our core values mixed with the way we work and the culture we're trying to have. And we came up with these 12 skills that you have to focus on and develop and be at a certain level to be able to perform in our environment. And obviously the higher levels, we put them into 4 buckets as well. So as you grow through the organization, the expectations get higher and higher for each of those skills, so that you have, if you're a senior leader here, you need to be able to teach these skills and manage these skills and really be the shining example of all of them. Again, some of them are around our core values. Feedback is one of them, coachability, communication, decision making, presence and energy, time management. So these are a bunch of the core competencies. So once we know those in our hiring process, we have all sorts of things we're doing to vet to see if we're having somebody that will, they're not gonna have all the skills, we know that, but at least we're understanding who's coming to the organization. We could be more selective for culture fit off of our 12 core competencies. And then we realize on day one, there's never going to be a time when an employee is more of a sponge, is going to retain as much as they possibly can than their first month or 2 on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So really, we slow down onboarding to really speed it up. And then, you think of the word like branding, like you can brand something into somebody. We look at like our onboarding, we're going to brand our culture into somebody. And the way we do is we actually make them read 8 books. These are the 8 books that inspired our culture the most. They're flooded with terms that we use all the time, examples, helps people think and act the ways that our culture was built upon. So they read these 8 books, and after each book, different members of the team will talk to them about how this actually applies here at Impact. Certainly a lot of what's in these books are aspirational. We're not always there yet, but that's where we're going. So it's good to know all that. And the first book we have everyone read is from Netflix. It's called No Rules Rules. It's all about decision-making and autonomy and giving freedom to employees to do their best work without putting policies and everything in place. Policies around expense management.
Yeah. Use common sense.
Really is. It's a whole book about using common sense.
Yeah.
As a CEO, I have a lot of freedom. I can come and go when I want, right? But I'm set up to do my best work, right? I know what we have to do, why, and when I have a certain job to do, I get to decide how to do it. That book is flooded with examples of that. So we have everyone read that first, and it usually shocks them. Like, this is crazy. We can never operate like Netflix or Netflix. Like, no, actually, we put a lot of that in place here at Impact, and this is how we did it. And this is what Bob is the CEO. This is what the leadership team, this is what we expect of you when you are an impactor. The next one is radical candor, talking about communication. Feedback is a gift is often an early one. They ask you answers, our framework and methodologies. That's one of the early books. So that's where we start our onboarding process with like the most basics of this is what it's like to work here at Impact. Mm. Then we get into more role specific stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, that's really good. And I think it also promotes this culture of growth and of learning and, always seeking out more knowledge when you start off like that too.
Yeah, well, one of our core values is obsess over learning. So
okay.
We actually are able to to link right back to that. One of the questions I'll ask in the interview process is, do you like to read? Because every impactor loves to read. If you don't love to read, you're not going to fit in here. Mm-hmm. Some people will say, yeah, I like to read. And other people will say, I love reading. I read like 50 books a year. Mm-hmm. So I don't hire the person that says, yeah, I like to read. I hire the person that says, I love reading. And when I start talking about some books, they're like, yeah, I read that one too. And they start talking about it, right? I can be like, yeah, you're one of us. You
Yeah,
should
yeah.
be working here.
Totally. Yeah. That's great. I love that. And so then the result has been that you've had employees that have stayed for 10 plus years. You've had very sticky culture. And as you said earlier, a lot of them are even your friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the hiring process outside of that. Hiring for growth. Like what are you doing when you have to bring a brand new stranger in?
Yeah. Well, some of those people have been with me for 10 years, didn't really go through any kind of formal hiring or onboarding process. They just, yeah, you're cool. Come work here. And over time, we've gotten better at that. Our hiring process, luckily, I don't know what Voodoo, our head of recruitment, does, but we put a job posting out and she'll get 100 applicants. So we have to filter through those. We do a video screen first and foremost. Just a couple of questions. We're getting the feel for the person, how they come across on camera. What setup do they have? We're in the coaching and training organization that works with clients. Like, you got to have common sense, decent lighting, decent audio, decent environment. If you're in a dark room with a laundry basket behind you, like, we're going to weed you out really, really fast. I don't need to listen to all your answers. I just need to get a feel. Is it worth spending some time with you? We follow top grading to a certain extent. If you ever heard of top grading, it's a hiring methodology they talk about in Scaling Up. It's another book called Who, which is really, really good. So we sort of follow that process. First interview, we have a series of particular questions. A lot of it's around culture. Like I mentioned, the book question we often ask. Then there's usually a deeper interview where we will go through the entire person's professional history. We spend a lot of time. Top grading will teach you that, the longer the interview, the harder it is to keep up with lies. Like, the truth really, really starts coming out when you really start diving deep into every aspect of someone's professional career. So those interviews can last a couple hours, sometimes in more senior roles. We always do some type of activity in a hiring process to try to simulate as realistic to the work environment as possible. We have, for certain positions we hire often, we've got canned activities. It could be role plays or anything like that. And sometimes when we have specialist positions, we have to come up with an activity. And there's always scoring off of that. Now, the last interview of our hiring process is always with me. At 70 people, I could still interview everybody. I don't say I have final say, but I have a voice. I definitely have veto power. If I think someone's we're making a hiring mistake. And really, one of the key things I always do in that interview is I try to scare people out of the job.
Yeah.
I know it sounds weird, but I paint the worst picture of what it could be like here at Impact. If we're hiring for a role, we probably have a problem that we're trying to fill. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Did somebody quit? And now somebody's got to come in and pick up the workload. We're growing so fast that our team's stressed out and is overloaded. Somebody's got to come in and add capacity. Like, we're never hiring because I'm a nice guy and I want to create a job. It's like, there's a reason why we're hiring. A brand new opportunity that I have no idea how we're going to solve it, but that's your job, is come and figure it out. And you're not gonna have a lot of resources. So I say things like that to people all the time to try to scare them out of the job. And in fact, we did have, you run a business. We always have major problems going on in our companies. You just, you focus on them and you overcome them. Our web team was a nightmare for 3 or 4 years. We couldn't get the staffing right. We couldn't get the team comp right. And we had a rotating door, even in the last few years, of website strategists. We finally solved it, but every time I was hiring somebody, I was just being very honest with them. It's like, we've had a lot of turnover in this role. We haven't figured it all out. We've got a backlog of client work. So you're going to come in and there's going to be a lot of work for you to do once you get up and going in the role. The team, they've had good days, but they've been stressed out a little bit. What I'm looking for is somebody to come and fix this for me. So I want you to know, if you accept this job, it's not going to be easy. And I need you to be a leader and help me solve this problem. Some people say, it's not for me.
Right.
Cool. Well, I just avoided another hiring mistake.
Hmm.
Other people would be like, you know what? I'm your person. I'm your
Right.
person. Don't worry, I
Yeah.
got you. And then I feel a little bit better, like, all right, that I'm not doing a bait and switch. I'm not painting this rosy picture of this role they're going to come into. I'm being very honest with them and what I expect of them. Again, still had some hiring mistakes there, but we finally got it right. We finally got
Hmm.
it right, and I think that's an important part. But that's a key trick for me is I try to scare people out of the job, and
Hmm.
certain people will get scared and be like, "Oh, Bob's intimidated. I can never work for him." Other
Right.
people will get really, really excited that somebody is like being very real with them and giving them a challenge. And I want people on my team that want challenges and want to step up and shine. So,
Right. Again, it's really comes down to being vulnerable and being
yeah,
willing to just be totally honest about it. Cause I'll do the same thing. And we do a lot of recruiting as well. And I mean, when we're recruiting, it's like, I'm going to paint the worst possible picture of this job because I'm not in that culture daily and I don't exactly know what they're going to be up against. But if they are willing to take the worst day and it's probably not even that bad, like they're going to
yeah,
be a fit.
you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And I think as leaders, we're too afraid to do that because we're afraid we're going to scare away the person. So we paint this picture of a rosy, beautiful situation that's not realistic.
Right.
And then the people come in, they feel like they bait and switch, they lose trust. And honestly, it's that this is wasn't what I signed up for. Now they're a flight risk.
Mhm.
And that's not
Well,
good for anyone.
and it's the same with values too. If you're not hiring against your values and the competencies, then that's a bait and switch as well. If you're saying, "Oh, this is what we stand for," but they're really aspirational, that's going to be another thing that's going to cause a revolving door of talent.
I was in a culture workshop about a year ago, and something really stood out to me that the speaker said. And you can have a very autonomous culture, or you can have a very controlling culture. Disney is one of the most controlling companies in the entire world. You go work at Disney World, like everything you got to do it exactly what they tell you to do it. There's no flexibility in your job, right? There's nothing wrong with either one.
Right.
There's so many successful companies that are either autonomous or controlling. Just be honest
Mhm.
with people. This and just know what you are. And you're talking about our culture. We're a controlling culture. That's what we are. It works for us. If you don't want that, don't come work here. But just be honest, and then you'll get people that want to work in that environment and can thrive in that environment,
Mhm.
or vice versa.
Mhm. Absolutely agree with you. Well, I think that's a fantastic way to end on this, Bob, is just getting that incredible insight from you on on your interviewing and onboarding program, as well as just how you're showing up as a leader. So I really appreciate all that. And I hope that we can stay in touch and connect back with you here in the next couple of months and see how you're doing.
I'd love that. I would love that. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, excellent.